Welcome to Brandstorm, the podcast that talks to the people behind America's brands. I'm Dan Trzynski, president of Platypus Advertising and Design.
And I'm Nancy Christopher, PR director at Platypus. Looking to do business overseas can be difficult without connections and a lack of understanding about the culture. Our guest today can help. Ihsan Atta is the president of Opus Corporation. It's a multifaceted company involved in a lot of different businesses. So welcome to Brandstorm, Ihsan.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here, and thanks for having me.
How would you describe Opus?
That's a good question. I always have problems myself describing it. But basically, Opus Corporation is an umbrella company that I had put in place actually shortly out of college. I knew that I was going to get into some type of business, and I wanted to have something in place because I'm a very impatient person. So if an idea came about or I found something I could immediately start, I would have everything in place and there wouldn't be any delays. So actually, under Opus Corporation, I had started a number of different businesses that were pretty diverse, and Opus is basically an umbrella company for my other businesses.
But your businesses are in like construction, windows.
Yeah, there's a wide range. I mean, I've gotten involved in importing, exporting natural stone like granite, onyx, marble, investment properties. We have a wholesale window business where we also do installs, Milwaukee windows. We're right now working on manufacturing some products that is going to have a charitable aspect to it. We're not releasing exactly what we're doing yet, but there's going to be a charitable aspect to it, but it's a product that's being manufactured right now. We're always open to different ideas. We're not exclusive to any industry. Whatever we find works and we're able to succeed in, we'll definitely try it.
You're definitely somewhat of a serial entrepreneur with an extensive background working with international companies. I read on your website you also do some consulting. So how can you help a business looking to connect with overseas suppliers or outlets for their products?
So I would advise anyone that's looking to do that initially to start on their own. They have to be willing to invest the time and the energy in researching and looking for companies that either produce a product they're looking to purchase or companies that are looking to purchase products that they're producing. Depending on what it is that they need, they have to kind of do that legwork on their own initially. I think that's very important. Things are so open now. I mean, we have Google, we have the internet.
Sure.
You know, it's so easy to research and find companies and businesses out there. There's also different agencies that are available and different platforms that you can go on to find companies that are in the industry or in the field that you're looking to be in. So that's first and foremost. I like to give examples to people sometimes when we're talking to them, like, and this is going to sound kind of funny because I was in college and you're thinking, oh, what's a college student thinking of business at the time? But I think it's always been in my system. I mean, I can remember as far back as 8th grade buying wholesale fake gold necklaces from Chicago and selling them to like friends at school and, you know, kids in the neighborhood because in the 80s, the herringbone necklace was like the thing to have.
Oh, that was big time, right.
Know, so,
Mr. T, remember?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, when I was in college, I had a friend whose father owned a tobacco factory in Pakistan and was looking to expand. He had told me he wanted some type of cups that would hold both hot and cold. Now, styrofoam cups hold both hot and cold. You would think not a big deal. Like, why don't you have that? But apparently they didn't have that there. They had cups that had the thin plastic lining or whatever. And if you put something hot in it, it would melt and you'd have that film. So I was on this mission to find a machine and I'm thinking, okay, I'm paying next year's tuition with this sale if I can make this work. First thing I did, I went to, I think, a local Pick and Save and grabbed a Solo cup bag and looked on the back and looked who the manufacturer was and looked for information. And that's how you had to do things before. There wasn't internet. There wasn't email. You literally had to go out there and look and research and do whatever. So I tell people, like, don't just assume that everyone's going to give you the information you need. You really have to do the
some digging.
And do some digging on your own.
Right.
And it saves you money rather than paying someone else to do it for you. So I think that's first and foremost is to do things on their own and then to start maybe talking to different agencies or going onto different platforms to see if they can find.
But when somebody has an idea of what they want to either bring in or export, you have a lot of connections. Then at that point, if you say that's where someone could engage with a consultant that says, hey, I need to find the person that I need to connect with.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty fortunate. I've established a good network of people around the world or in a number of countries, including, you know, obviously in the States.
What are some of those countries that you work with the most?
I would say Pakistan, India, China, Middle Eastern countries, and the United States is primarily, and not so much Pakistan anymore. Every country has its challenges, but I do have access to people, and I take advantage of that and use them as a resource, and vice versa. I mean, we try to help each other out. So I think that a lot of that network that was built sometimes started with friendships, and sometimes it didn't start as a friendship, but it evolved into a friendship.
What would you say are some of the more common mistakes that companies do when they want to do business abroad?
I think the biggest mistake or hindrance to their success initially is not understanding the culture of the country. I think that's very important, especially outside of the United States. I think we tend to be a little bit more ethnocentric here and think that everything revolves around us.
Right.
And so I think
don't understand that, doesn't it?
Right.
And when I say culture, I mean it in a broad sense because it really does encompass so much. Just to give you an example, sometimes just how you speak to someone, and we were discussing this earlier.
Pre-game, yeah.
Messaging with people. Some countries you may find they seem to be very sensitive to the way you're responding. The way they send emails sometimes seem a little weird as though they're your friend, but it's an initial connection with them. So understanding things like that, it's not uncommon for people to keep messaging you. You may make an inquiry, for example, inquire about a product and cost, and you're just inquiring, simple, and you just
looking for a response.
Yeah, looking for a quick response, and all of a sudden, these individuals or this company or the individual that you corresponded with may start to basically keep following up with you, and in a friendly way, not necessarily asking you, "Are you interested?" Just, "How are you? What's going on?
Okay,
how's this and that?"
Is that weird? That would seem weird to me.
It may seem weird. It's a normal practice for some countries to do that, and it's because they're trying to establish a business relationship with you.
So you mentioned understanding the culture is really important. Can you give us some examples?
Sure, absolutely. I think that one example is sometimes when we sit down with someone, we want to get straight to business. In some cultures, that just doesn't happen. You may sit down and you may have tea and coffee and eat, and it may be a long meeting, if you want to call it, for say 2-3 hours. For example, the first 2.5 hours may all be social, and the last half an hour may be business. So that's just something to understand that's unique to a certain culture, that part of business
is social. What culture is that?
Middle Eastern culture is typical
to
do that, where part of the business when you're meeting with someone is they're not really discussing business at the beginning of the meeting, or sometimes for quite a bit of time. Of course, there's exceptions to everything because people are familiar with different cultures, and people in the Middle East are familiar with American culture, for example. They may follow more of an American system, but this is just something to understand. Going into someone's home, for example, is something huge, but it happens sometimes. So you have to really feel that they trust you and they like you. But typically you're meeting outside. Knowing handshakes, whose hand to shake first sometimes is a big deal. A lot of cultures will expect you to shake the elder's hand first. Some cultures, you start from the right and then go around. Introductions sometimes vary, where you're introduced to the most senior person first versus down the ladder.
You mentioned something before about gifts or exchanging, that type of thing.
Yeah, so gifts it's important to know when to give and what type of gift to give, because some gifts that you may think are, this is the perfect gift to give to someone, may actually be an insulting thing. Sometimes the number of items within a gift may be unique, because some cultures have the concept of luck and unlucky and things like that. So the quantity of something that you give.
So where do you learn all that stuff?
Yeah, do you study?
Google. In the past, I've read things. Sometimes people that were involved in trade would maybe write articles or books and things like that. But you can find a lot of that stuff on Google. I mean, that's what's so amazing now. It's just so easy to do and learn so many things. But I think it's important, and that's where I say you have to make a conscious effort
to
do your homework and learn about the other cultures, not just for yourself. If you're going to be successful with other businesses, people respect that. Sometimes just shooting out a message or an email wishing them a happy holiday because you're aware of what holiday they're celebrating goes a long way. And I mean, if you go on my phone, I program all the different holidays from different countries so that I know when to send messages out, for example, just to wish someone a happy new year. Chinese New Year is coming up.
That's right. And good manners is universal.
Absolutely. It goes a long way.
I had just heard heard about. In India, the internet service providers actually tell their citizens, stop texting so much, because they wake up every morning and the very first thing they do is send out a text to maybe 50 people saying, good morning, I hope your day is wonderful. And they're memes and they're very elaborate. And
I've gotten into the memes.
yeah, it's a very wonderful thing. It's very nice, but it jams up the system there quite a bit, and they have a lot of people there.
Well, and I think it sets some people off. Like, some people don't like it. But if you're planning on doing business abroad, I think you just have to understand some of these nuances and accept them. And you just don't have to respond, or you can block certain messages or put them on silent so that you're not interrupted during the day or at night or whatever, because sometimes you'll get them throughout the night.
Yeah, you probably never sleep.
Not too much. Thankfully, I'm a night person anyways.
So on the flip side of that, or what do you look for in a good relationship or a partnership overseas?
I think there's a number of things that I look for. First and foremost is feeling comfortable in the relationship with the person, feeling that they are also interested and desire to do business with you. Honesty obviously is an issue. Trust plays a big part, because you're dealing with someone abroad that you don't have the legal recourses that you would have here. But just having access, knowing that you can contact the person, they'll respond, knowing that they're following up with you regarding certain inquiries that you had and getting back to you is very important to me. And I think also just knowing that the company is able to provide you and capable of providing a good quality product, that they're able to produce the quantity that you want in the time frame that you want. There has to be a certain understanding between you and the individuals that you're dealing with abroad. And there also has to be an understanding that as clear as you may make it of what your expectations are, you may get something completely different.
Right.
Sometimes I wonder if it's a lack of understanding. I think sometimes it's just things aren't as important in terms of, here in the United States, we're very particular to the detail. Some places, they're not very particular to detail. So you need early on to emphasize what's important to you. I will tell you, and I'll give you an example that was kind of terrible for us when I was importing the stone. And I'm not importing so much anymore, but we are wholesaling. But we had a great distributor that we were dealing with that was distributing all over the United States. And we had a product, we were specifically onyx, which is hard to come by, and certain colors are hard to come by. And we had access to a certain quarry that had this color. This distributor was very particular about the shade of the stone that he wanted, because he was setting sample boards up, sending them to his retailers all over the United States. So we actually had him sign off on some tiles, a 12 by 12 tile, and we sent it to the factory in Pakistan. And we said, put this in front of the face of your quality control people in the line that's manufacturing. If it doesn't look like this, pull it. Needless to say, as much as we kept reinforcing that with him during the whole process.
Color was in the eye of the beholder.
Pretty much.
Well, there are a lot of shades of blue and green, and
there were 50 shades of this onyx. So, but the ending wasn't quite as exciting. So we had, thankfully, like some granite and marbles that they had also ordered that he had kept. But this onyx, we unfortunately lost the deal from him ordering. Like, he would have been a regular customer, and the quantity that he would have ordered would have been significant. And he was willing to pay because he knew he wanted a certain quality, and he was known in the industry to be willing to pay for what he wanted. Unfortunately, because onyx is a very soft stone, one of the issues was an epoxy that when there was some cracking, they would use an epoxy, which the gentleman didn't want. More importantly, and it wasn't completely the factory's fault, because onyx is a soft stone, we want to do a little bit extra, so we were putting fiberglass mat in the back of the tiles and the slabs that were being brought in, just to kind of give them extra strength. So it was important that we don't change the shade, because onyx is translucent. So we had him checking, and he ended up finding a type of glue in, I think, Italy or Germany that was white. Unfortunately, when it dried off-white, which changed the shade just enough that
it didn't look like the sample anymore.
It didn't look like the sample anymore, and so he rejected, unfortunately, that container. So, so it's just things like that you have to pay attention to.
You talked about stone. Are there any particular types of businesses that are in demand overseas, to your knowledge?
I don't know any specific. I mean, so I've been more involved in importing. I think it's in terms of exporting, I don't know that there's any specific items that are in demand. I think that it being kind of a global society now that people have access to everything, I think, what comes into play is the quality of the products that they're receiving. So you may go into a third world country and assume that they don't have a certain type of product, but they very well probably have it. They just may have different levels of quality where, someone from a higher socioeconomic status may be able to afford something and someone from a lower socioeconomic status may buy something less expensive. There is, I would say, in some countries, there is a demand for name brand American products. So if you can get that into or get some type of
You always hear the story about Levi's in Russia and
McDonald's.
Right.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's huge, and those are great stories. If I can bore you with another
Sure.
quick story, so I had went to Pakistan once, and it's a long flight, and the whole way there, I was told about this hotel. I forgot what it's called, Intercontinental, that had this amazing buffet spread of all this different types of foods and fruits and stuff.
I know
like
where
that.
this is heading.
And I was just so excited and I was just famished, landing. Long story short, we ended up getting taken to Pizza Hut because it had just opened that year.
Awesome. I love Pizza Hut.
So that was interesting. And then I also got a trip to Morocco where going into McDonald's was like going into like fine dining. I mean, the decor, the layout, everything was just beautiful, the woodwork, inside McDonald's. It's new. So if you can get a franchise, I mean, that's huge. It's being able to get the franchise to go into some of these countries. Sometimes there's limitations. Sometimes someone owns the rights. In a lot of countries, at least the ones I deal with, unfortunately, sometimes the government or certain people in the government have control over that. So all the good franchises are basically not on the table for you to have. But if there's a product that you have that's unique, that isn't mass produced, that isn't made by anyone else, that you may have a patent on, for example, in the medical field, something unique, then I would definitely kind of research and see if there's a market.
That leads me to what kind of resources / kind of vendors are necessary to work with foreign governments or countries, like banks, accountants, lawyers. Do you have people that you say, hey, these guys really get it? As a business here in the U.S., you've got to have those things.
Sure. So if you're looking to export, there's different agencies that will help. Like obviously the government wants to promote business and businesses in the United States. So you have an agency such as the U.S. Commercial Service, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration, and they help U.S. companies get started in exporting or increasing their sales in other countries. So that's an avenue. Besides, once again, going into these different platforms and kind of doing the legwork yourself. As far as banking and attorneys and things like that, it really is unique to every business.
Right.
I mean, you may be purchasing from abroad. You
have to exchange money somehow.
Yeah, you
or
have to
another,
exchange
right.
money. You may just be sending a wire, or you may be doing a letter of credit, which is very common, especially for larger purchases, where you do a letter of credit where items aren't paid until they're received. You have the bill of lading and
Right.
are able to go through everything. Now, keep in mind also that a lot of times that payment is transferred as soon as you get that bill of lading or it lands, but the quality of the
you don't
merchandise,
get to inspect it first.
You don't get to inspect it first. And keep in mind, sometimes when it lands in the port, it may get delayed because it might have to go through inspection through U.S. Customs.
A longshoreman strike we had a couple of years ago.
I mean, we've had everything happen from them having to do inspections that have taken a while and x-rays to containers tipping over where everything inside the container was damaged. And then you have to hire a crane company that will go out and, pick the container up. So
Never a dull moment.
there's never a dull moment. And I think you have to just be prepared and understand the different steps. Make sure you're protected. Make sure you have insurance, for example, for different things. If attorneys, for example, you may be manufacturing a product, you may want to get a trademark attorney. And I have one, by the way, if you guys want. That's very inexpensive. That's all they do. And they're about building relationships. And so submit trademark applications and things like that. So that's something if you need to get a patent on something. So then in those regards, you're getting an attorney. If you're dealing with a company where you're putting contracts together and you're getting a little more large scale where it's more of an international business type attorney. But keep in mind that the laws in other countries aren't the same as here, and you really don't have the recourse. And even if you did have the recourse, sometimes the time and cost and and delays make it just prohibitive to proceed with. So you just have to do your due diligence. And I think once you establish a good relationship with someone, I'm kind of old school like that. I'm about building that relationship and my word and that handshake and all of that good stuff. And I found that to work for me. And I think that you do find that in a lot of other countries and individuals. But at the same time, there's also
buyer beware.
Yeah, the buyer beware. And so that's where just establishing that relationship works. That's why you shouldn't take offense or feel bothered if you're communicating with someone and they're calling you and just kind of having more social talk and not, business talk, because I think they're also familiarizing themselves with you.
What kind of person am I dealing with?
Exactly.
If I'm a listener today and let's say I have this widget that I want to sell abroad and I want to get in touch with you, what's the process that I would go through with you?
So if you got in touch with me, first of all, you got to get my phone
Or
number.
the other,
No,
or,
I'm sorry.
Well,
or-
we'll get that.
just
We'll
don't-
get that in a minute. We'll get that in a
or
minute.
even the other way. Maybe
Yeah.
you need to source a product overseas,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because you said you're doing more importing.
Yeah, listen, I'm open to everything always. I never look at anything as not an opportunity. And just meeting people and networking, I think people don't understand the value of building relationships like that. You never know, maybe 10 years down the line, someone that you met may be able to assist you.
Sure.
Or you may be able to assist them, and it's kind of a back and forth thing. But I'll tell you, if anyone were to call me, I would first find out what they've done, because I'm not really willing to commit time to something if they're not willing to commit time to their own project. So I'm definitely happy to help in any way in terms of maybe helping them connect with someone. Maybe if I have a particular or a unique contact that would benefit them, I'm more than happy to share that with them. I'm a firm believer that things come back, good things come back to you. So I'm all about helping. And there's also, depending on the extent of, if I can quote unquote consulting they want, I mean, there may be fees involved. And all of that is open discussion.
So what's the best way to get in touch with you? Do you want a phone call, email, LinkedIn?
Either way, I'm pretty much attached to my phone. So if I get a LinkedIn message, I, respond. If I get a text, I respond. Phones, email. So really, I'm open to any way. Email is probably nice, just because if I'm in a meeting or if I'm, busy,
Sure.
I have the information, I can get back to you. I don't tend to call people back if they don't leave a message, because I just don't have time.
Well, we'll put all your contact information in the show notes. So
Okay.
for listeners that are looking to reach out to you, they'll be able to find you that way.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, so if any of our listeners are interested in what they heard today and they like what they heard today, please be sure to review, share, subscribe to Brandstorm.
This is Dan Trzynski along with Nancy Christopher at Platypus Advertising and Design, an awesome company that creates perceptions that influence choice for a variety of regional, national, and even global brands on a daily basis. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode of Brandstorm.